welcome to the podcast from Duendelvin. I'm Taylor, and in this podcast we will be exploring the world of Savarion. Here we have Jeff and Kyle. Today we will be discussing part 2 of magic. Last time we only touched on mundane.
Nope, that's not right. Sorry, last time we didn't touch on mundane.
Last time.
Yeah, we did. We talked about.
Oh yeah, we did touch on mundane. You're right. That's my apologies. I'm over here thinking I miswrote something.
Okay, I read it in the wrong tone.
It's okay.
So
you
it's
got
like
it.
last time we only touched on mundane. So let's get right into it. What is mundane magic?
So, mundane magic is the magic that comes from the Savarianites themselves. So, when they were created, they were given a divine spark. And there's a little bit more of a story that I want you to dive into with that. But the divine spark inside of them allowed Savarianites to create magic of their own accord. So, last time we talked about in-depth essence and arcane magic, and that essence comes from the moons and arcane comes from the ley lines in the water. And so mundane magic actually comes from the divine spark that's within each Savarianite. So every single Savarianite would have the capability to use mundane magic. This isn't something that some are born with and some aren't born with. Everybody would have it. So
Heck yeah. Yeah, if we want to talk into that real quick. During the creation, when the two gods were coming together and actually building this up together, they made one major mistake. They didn't build the Savarianites to die. That was something that had to be corrected immediately by the Dysactos. He recognized immediately that they had imbued too much of the divine spark within their creations. And it kind of makes sense because the first things they created were not meant to die. They built the lesser gods first, and so out of either just habit or without maybe thinking about it, whatever the case may be for the two of them, death was not introduced to them until the Dysactos said, nope, these gotta die, because if they are allowed to live for prolonged periods of time, they could become a chaotic force that could rival gods in the universe. Yup.
and when he did that, he created them a soul. So
Yes.
It was like he's punishing Parbucon and Veritus Sanctus's choice to allow them to have that much power, but then didn't want to punish the 9 races for it, so he gave them all a soul and an afterlife.
Yep, he created a paradise of sorts that we haven't really fleshed out because paradise is a little personal. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
All right.
All right.
Yeah.
Is there anything else where mundane gets its power?
Ooh. That's pretty much it. Like, they get their power and derive it from need. Like, they're themselves, and then if there's a need, they're able to create something to fulfill that need, which is pretty cool. It's kind of wild just thinking about it. They would be like, you know what? I don't want to build this house. I'm tired of just building this house out of stone all the time, the hard way. That guy can just make stone move, and so it's easy for him. I got to carry this stinking brick over here and drop it down and mortar and then all of a sudden he was like, oh, I made things that felt right. I can make this. And suddenly, yeah, one of the mundane magics is shelter crafting. So, need, desire, whatever the purpose, it's there, it's available, and it's within them. And then that creates these, I guess we call them schools, that they can then be like, bro, I did this, let me teach you. And since they created it and they can teach it, and since like Jeff said, every creature has a spark and a soul, every one of the 9 races, every one of the Savarianites has access to it. So anyone who wants to study it could use it. Arcane, essence, doesn't matter.
Right.
All right. Out of all the Savarianites, who discovered mundane magic?
So mundane magic is not because it is mundane, but because Mundinus, the Muscapert, discovered it. And so, like we talked about in the creation story, the Muscapert's divine purpose was to push magic as far as it could go. And so they divided themselves into the schools, basically the light side of the elemental magic school, the dark side. And so you'd have a school that was fire magic. You'd have a school that was earth magic, a school that was air magic, so on and so forth, for all the different essence types of magic. And so the Muscapert pushed that. But there are Muscapert who were born without magic, which they felt was a little counterintuitive, because if their purpose was to push magic, why was I born without magic? And so those group of Muscapert that did not have access to essence magic formed their own little group, and Mundanus was the leader of that group, and his group, and so he's given credit for it. His group actually discovered this mundane magic, the divine spark magic, as it were. And so that's where the originating of it comes from.
All right. And is there any there's different types of magic, right? What are there different types of mundane magic?
Yeah. I mean, we talked a little bit. I kind of hinted at there's different schools of mundane magic, all for certain purposes. We also have, so I can go into them. The Savarian Knights have created combat sense, sense magic, the ability to actually determine if essence was utilized. Combat sense is I am magically intuiting what you're capable of in this scenario, so it's allowed them to survive in combat. Thinking about it in this regard, you have someone who's gifted with essence on a battlefield with someone who has no essence whatsoever. It's effectively like fighting a toddler. They stand no chance. So, being able to sense that kind of danger became an innate capability to those who survived in combat against an essence wielder. And then they were like, oh, I could teach this to others and we can live longer. Let's go. And so that became a thing that was available. Performing is pretty cool. Obviously, music touches the soul. And combining that with divine spark would create influences.
Good. Keep going.
And sorry, influences and other such things. Then there was, like, let's talk about shelter crafting, where there was a need for it. I don't know, a little bit of laziness, a little bit of function, and then they were like, I can do better than this. And then they taught everybody else how, and it actually created buildings that were, once they were created, they were actually locked. You couldn't manipulate these buildings. Like, if someone built a house out of stone and there was another earth mage that came along, they could use that as a weapon against other people. And so part of shelter crafting was like, you don't get to touch this. And so it's separate and outside of just earth magic, even though it looks like a stone building or a wood building, depending on what they chose to at creation. Illusion magic, we talked about this a little bit last time as well. It was a lot of fun. I kind of feel like it was more of a party favor. Like, I'm drunk at the bar. Let me do some stuff. But then it kind of became its own school as they kind of focused on that and found that it had purpose, scaring people away, obviously defending yourself without having to cause harm. Automation, one of my all-time favorites. Man, I don't want to sweep this house. Broom, you do it. And straight up, Broom will be like, whoop, psh, 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 full-on Mickey Mouse. I'm going to animate myself. And
Fantasia.
Yeah, full-on Fantasia. This is the one that the goblins created. We talked about this, where they create money, is essence refining. This awful process of emaciating a corpse and taking its essence out into a liquid form and then compressing that into a coinage. You can learn the process to take the essence out of a creature that you've killed.
But the essence refining actually goes further into that, and you can turn it into a solid form or a liquid form. And using it in the liquid form allows you to fuse it to materials. And so you could take essence, turn it into the liquid form, and then fuse it to a weapon, and you could advance the strength of a weapon. You can add a essence talent. So fireball, I keep going back to the fire because it's like the simplest.
Yeah.
But you could put fireball on your sword and expend the fireball, and it would have limited uses, but you could add that to a sword. And so that's, liquid essence could do that as well. So
now we get into one of my favorites. Divine favor. Somebody prayed hard enough that they needed God's intervention to make this happen, and so suddenly a piece of divinity was like, okay, here you go, and they succeeded beyond. It's like a miracle. they effectively created a miracle magic that can come into play. Now, it's not always going to work. As a matter of fact, once you start this process, you can't undo it. So once you become engaged with divine favor, it affects your life forever, and it can very well help you as it can hurt you. It's the only, so in the role-playing game that we've created, it's the only function of critical fails and critical successes, and you get to choose to go into it. It's not innate to the game. And then the last one is runic magic, and that is like all the different types of the mundane magics that exist within Savarion to date, and there may be more. You know, it just depends on what they decide to create. All right, any questions there?
Is there anything else you would like to touch on mundane magic?
Anything you want to go over?
I don't think so. Did we talk in depth about the performing
Not
mundane versus the essence side?
Ooh, I did not make that comparison, no.
Okay, so we do have the performer in the essence tree as well as in the mundane tree, and the reason that we have that one that crosses both worlds is because the Savarianites created the essence, like the moon essence, what we were talking about, the broken moon, and then gave that moon essence power that provided the performer from the essence tree, but it's also from the mundane tree. So technically, you can get it from either point. You could be born with it innately, or you could learn it because of the nature in which it was created. So,
but if you pull it naturally, like if you're naturally gifted as a performer, you will be profoundly stronger and get combat function with that performer tree, versus if you study it as a mundane magic, you're not going to suddenly be like, I studied performing and now I have access to essence. If you weren't born with that, you don't get to have it.
But if you were born with it, you could have both.
Absolutely.
And so performers who knew both sides of it would be dynamic performers. So
intense, insane. Like our musical world is definitely still flourishing and way beyond powerful as far as being able to influence touch and create masterpieces that are surpassing the ages. It's pretty cool. All right, I think that covers most of everything else. Any other questions on the mundane?
I don't really have any more questions on mundane, no. You guys touched on ritual magic last time. What is that? What's the deal with ritual magic?
All right, bro, you got started this one.
All right. So to fully understand ritual magic, we have to back up before ritual magic was created. So we briefly talked about how Timothelsia created that. So Timothelsia is one of the four comitai that were created. The four comitai are Venethos, and he's the head of the comitai. And then you have Cochina, Pharameos, and Timothelsia. In that order of, think of it like an age order or pecking order.
Like a leadership order.
Leadership order. And
Chain of command. That's what we're looking for.
What was it?
Chain of command.
Chain of command. How did we not get that one? Chain of command. So that's the chain of command. And so at the end of the fall, right? So we have the three great wars that happen: the fall, the destruction, the rebirth. And that's where we're going to do the board games. So the fall is our first board game, and that one's coming out soon. But the fall ends, the rebirth starts, the underworld comes up. So you have the Immortuum and the Comitai come up to participate in this war that's happening, right? And in the midst of all of this, the three leaders that are still alive when this happens of the 9 mortal races are Clat of the orcs, Sarona of the halfling, and Nyakowadia of the Samgatsu. Now, Nyakowadia is, if I were to relate this to something a lot of people know, right? We look at Batman as like the ultimate strategist. His plot armor is, but I have a contingency for that. If Batman were to go up against Nyakowadia, Nyakowadia would have a contingency for Batman's contingency. So she's that far ahead. She's ready for everything. The only thing in her life that ever like caught her off guard was when the underworld entered the natural world, because it's not supposed to be possible. She had an answer for everything, and she was literally just like handling the war, and the way that she operated in a war council, and she was 800-900 years old at this point. No, she wasn't.
No,
Sorry,
that's Bakoa.
that's Bakoa. But so she would sit behind her war council, and she had all these letters, and she would just hand letters out to her leadership, and she would say, if this happens, open this letter. If this happens, open this letter. And so if I was a commanding general on the battlefield and the humans came out of the forest and were fighting the halflings, right? I had a scroll that Naiquadia said, hey, if you're fighting the halflings on an open field and the humans come through the forest, break this scroll open, right? And so the general would be like, oh, okay, that's what she wants us to do. It was that she was that far ahead of everything. And so when the underworld comes up, she's like excited for the first time because she's not ready for it. And she's like, oh, this isn't even like possible. This is not supposed to happen. It's not possible. And so she immediately starts writing contingencies for everything possibly that could happen. And so she starts watching the battlefield and watching the Comitai participating in the battlefield. Now, Venethos is this master controller of the battlefield. He has the ability to not in the same way control the battlefield like Naiquadia does, but he's directly involved. Like his ability to...
He has legions of undead that he's managing across multiple battlefields.
Right. And so he's actually participating in the battle on different fronts, controlling the minds of the leadership. And so his mind starts getting spread. And so what Naiquadia does is she uses Sirona's power set and martial capabilities to send her to one area, and she sends her own people to the other area and some of Clat people to one area, and then hands Clat a scroll. And she says, when this happens, open the scroll. Right? And so Clat goes out and he's participating in the fight. Venethos shows up. Like Venethos himself is in the battlefield where Clat is fighting, and the moment happens that Clat's supposed to break open the scroll. And so he breaks open the scroll and it says, this is your moment, take him on. And so Clat, with his staff, goes, okay, it's all worked so far. And so he takes his staff and he goes toe-to-toe with Venethos. One-on-one fight. Now, mind you, Venethos is distracted. He's fighting all over the place, but his physical body's in one spot. And Clat goes toe-to-toe, and Venethos doesn't think to himself, oh, I need all my focused attention here, right? And so because Clat is both a martial master and a healer, he's able to win this fight and kill Venethos in this moment. Because of that, Venethos's soul leaves, and Timithelsia decides that she's going to go figure out how to keep his soul around so that they can maintain their authority in the world. So Timithelsia creates the Port of Lost Souls using Venethos's soul. And this is basically a trap for other souls to get sucked into, and creates the power for ritual magic. So when we talk about why it's evil, one, it required the death of one of the most evil beings in the world to die, and then uses his soul to trap other souls. So this is the power set of ritual magic and where its power originated from. So this is why it is evil.
It's bad. Bad news bears.
So that's where it comes from. And then the only way to conduct a ritual is to use a triangle, the shape of a triangle. And so what Timithelsia did was she said, okay, we're using the battery power from Venethos, and then there's three of us left, Cochina, Pharameos, and myself, Timithelsia, right? The three of us will create the 3 points. And Cochina represents life. Pharameos represents death. I represent purpose. So the 3 points are life, death, purpose. This is how they start. And then Timithelsia, I'll let you get into it. Sorry,
You're good. No, go for it.
So Timithelsia creates the very first ritual, which is called Solstasis. And what it does is it separates the body from the soul permanently. The body no longer has agency the same way it does with the soul, but also can't die. So the body exists outside of itself, outside of the soul, and then the soul gets trapped somewhere else, right? And so when the mortal races, the 9 races, discover how to use soul stasis, it takes on a little bit different form than what Timothelia originated, because she's obviously
The creator.
the creator of it and a god. And so she uses it to rip Clat apart. And she puts Clat's soul in Kungin inside the wall so that his soul can never participate in the ultimate of, what an orc can do is be part of the wall. So he has to live as a soul separate from the wall, wandering inside of the walls of Kungin, never participating.
Inside the city of Kungin.
Inside the city,
walls.
yeah. Sorry. Never actually participating in his ultimate glory. And then they take his body and put it in the underworld with the Kamatai. So this was like,
He becomes like a pet monkey to them, which is unfortunate.
yes.
They're like, dance, Clat, and his body has no control, so it's going to do what it does.
Right. So the ultimate punishment for Clat, because he killed Venethos.
Yep.
So that's how that all works and where it all came from, the power structure.
All right. What are the functionalities of ritual magic?
So there's so many different things ritual magic can do. Yeah, it's kind of goofy. Because we have, like we talked a little bit, you can make light sources that are motion activated that have different colors. So that's kind of where, like, if you wanted a city that didn't have to consistently have someone go out and light torches, you could use a ritual, which would take 3 people. Well, hello, Corbin Leaper. So you could use that ritual to create light stones. It's always dangerous. There's a thing we'll get to later, I'm sure, where it's a danger to activate a ritual. So I joke with us calling this like a bougie city. You're risking it all for a little bit of impressive ambiance. But you can do that. You can manipulate the weather. You can summon dead things. You can summon a thing we talked about called an essence wraith, which is a terrible idea unless you want to mutually assure the destruction of everything in your area, yourself included. You can form dead from corpses. It's not a good thing, but the rituals are kind of cool because they also, the more complex the ritual is for a mortal to utilize, requires more points. I mean, as the rituals increase in difficulty, you have to have more people to help channel that, because the ones who created originally were gods, so they only needed 3 to do any ritual ever. And I'm sure there's more that I'm missing as far as what a ritual can do. Jeff, if you want to jump in on some of those.
Well, a ritual there's not a lot of limitations on a ritual of what you can do. There's teleportation stones.
Oh, the scrying stones. I'd forgotten about the scrying stones. Let
Yeah,
you see
so
distances.
Yeah, see into the distances and stuff like that. Or basically like you can set a stone and then you can see what's moving past it, stuff like that. Ritual magic has a lot of availability, but it was originally, Timothelia was like, this is for me. And then it was discovered by the 9 races, and I'll let you tell that story a little bit. But once it was, Timothelia was like, this isn't okay. I don't want this to be a thing. And so either she would have to shut down the Port of Lost Souls or punish people who used it, and decided to punish people to use it anyway. And so that's where the Essence Wraith comes from. She created an Essence Wraith. And that was actually with the help of Cochina.
Mm-hmm.
So Cochina actually created the Essence Wraith, and then Timothelia used it to
Bound it to rituals.
And so every now and again, if you mess up a ritual, it could kill you as a mortal. If you mess it up, it could kill you. If you get it right, it could summon an Essence Wraith.
And still kill you.
So it's very, very dangerous magic for the mortal races to use. But yeah, so
Any other questions on ritual magic, Tay?
What are the is there any other dangers of ritual magic besides the essence wraith?
I mean, failing will kill you. Like, it drains you. Like, your soul then goes to fuel the failed ritual. which is going to it's like a one-way port to the Lost Soul, like the one-way ticket to the Port of Lost Souls, way ahead of your time. Um, that's a major no. You don't want to mess up a ritual, because that's that. But yeah, mostly that. I'm sure there's more creative ways that you can find, especially as you're divining new ways. You're effectively trying to tread on the realm of the gods by creating new rituals without any kind of guidance. You're gonna, if you mess something up in the way that ritual is designed, it could backfire. You could force yourself into a mutation. You could turn yourself into a wraith of sorts and live a half-life. You could expel your own soul from your body in a Kungan or in a Clat style situation where your soul is now bound away from your body, and you watch your body just meander away and be like, "That's mine. Don't go." Yeah, there's lots of bad things that can happen, and the fun part is when we get into the role playing game, when we eventually get to release it and we finish it. It is going to have a fun little table of, you want to mess with your players? We got you. You want to add some more? Hit us up. We down. We'd love to hear what you did to your players. That's gonna be so much fun. Oh, but yeah,
Oh boy.
it gets bad, and there's no end to the possibility that you can do to succeed in it either. Like if it's a successful ritual, it's not designed for combat function. It's not like I'm going to do a ritual to make this thing blow up. If you try and do something like that, you're going to die. That's where it's going to rebound, and your intended purpose for a combat function is going to effectively kill you.
Well, and it's a time-consuming event.
It is. It's not a quick
ritual
thing.
Is a time-consuming event.
It requires materials. It requires time. It requires a specific type of layout. You have to scribe the symbols appropriately. And then gauging the difficulty obviously requires more people. If you try and power a ritual without enough people, everyone's going to die. Yeah, bad stuff.
Seems like a very particular art. Are there any notable rituals that have come out from mortal hands?
Okay, so this is kind of fun. Because Timothée never wanted rituals to be a part of mortal life, right? And there is fairy tales that permeate throughout all of the different races. Whether you're a matriarch or a patriarch determines whether it's the ritual king or the ritual queen. Okay, and so this individual had a problem and needed to solve it. They lived in this valley, in this beautiful valley, and then when the world became a bad, like a war-torn place, and the weather became unpredictable, this massive storm just came and settled over the valley and took this lush, gorgeous place and made it a barren, frosty wasteland. And this lord of this area, or lady of this area who owned it all, was like, I am not, I guess baron or baroness, however you want to look at it.
Queen King.
Yep. I don't want to lose my land. I need to find a way to solve this. Invited all sorts of people. And of course we talk about Dirtbag Ayala. Ayala, the boogeyman, came along and said, I may have a way to do this. And since Ayala can change his shape, was able to appear as different people and hint towards this leader, this ruler, that there was a type of magic that could help him to dissipate the awfulness around his kingdom. Or her kingdom. Their kingdom. And they began to dive into ritual magic. Through Dirtbag Ayala's tutelage. And helped him figure out some that worked, never expressing the dangers. Okay. Never once told him the dangers of what he was doing. And eventually, yes, the fairy tales go that the ritual king or queen succeeded, brought life back into it, and then tried to make a bougie kingdom. And the more rituals they did became kind of a commonplace. The higher, like eventually, a ritual screwed up, and an essence wraith was summoned. And an essence wraith consumes everybody that participates in the ritual, and then gets stronger the more it consumes. And so it consumes everybody, consumes this whole kingdom. So this whole kingdom has fallen into myth and legend. And there's an essence wraith out there that's fallen into myth and legend with this valley of lush life. It's full of riches, and it's very... I guess it would be like our Atlantis, only our Atlantis didn't sink, it fell into obscurity.
Interesting.
And this is what's fun about it, too, because we know Duendelvin has the magic to witness major points in history, but she can't witness through Ayala's eyes. He's protected from any kind of prying experience. And since an essence wraith ate the progenitor of who gave rituals to the mortals. There is no connecting point for the magic to take hold, so she cannot gain an accurate depiction from anybody in this kingdom as to who or what they were and how they made it happen. So that's why it's like a rumor and a fairy tale. And now, throughout all the 9 races, it's also like a boogeyman story where they talk about, you better eat your vegetables or the essence wraith will get you. You better go to bed. You better listen to your parents or the essence wraith gonna get you.
And so, with the exception of Ayala, no one actually knows who the ritual king or queen is. And we say it that way because of the 9 races, 4 of them are matriarchies and 5 of them are patriarchies. Mm-hmm. And so it's actually, it very likely could have been an elven, queendom.
Yeah.
I've never actually said that. It's a weird word to say. And then, so if it was ruled by elves, it would be the ritual queen. And if it was ruled by humans, it would be the ritual king. And so depending on which race you grew up in, it would have been told from that perspective, right? Does that make sense? So,
yeah.
And then the area around it, everything that got consumed by the essence wraith became a husk. And the purpose behind this one, so Ayala didn't intend this. He intended to bring ritual magic to everybody, but didn't intend for the essence wraith to take over the entire
kingdom,
valley and become this reason why we don't do ritual magic in the world is this thing. But Timothelsia did. She was like, when she was seeing all of this, she held the essence wraith back until there was a good amount of rituals done and introduced and all that kind of stuff, and then allowed the essence wraith to go into this valley and keeps the essence wraith in this valley so that the world continues to believe that ritual magic is bad, because her goal still is to punish those who use it, but doesn't want people to use it anyway. And so she's like, well, this worked out in my favor. I'm going to keep this as something shrouded in mystery, as a fear tactic to keep people from using it. So.
Yeah, and that's it. I mean, there's also people who go, we talked about that you can use rituals to kind of raise the dead. There's this weird thing that happens throughout our world where the dead don't always stay dead. Sometimes they come back. So dead are gathered quickly, and they're put in mausoleums and kept in, there's a reason that cemeteries are walled and kept very protected. People guard the inside. They're always facing in, not out when it comes to cemeteries. But you'll have people sometimes who try to conduct rituals and raise the dead within these mausoleums to try and raise havoc, because they're just... Vagog's corruption. We talked about Vagog a little bit. Her sole purpose is to corrupt the world so it can return to nothingness. That's where that's who he's a priest of Vagog, effectively. And so that was his goal, was to create another way for Vagog's message to reach people, and ritual magic made a lot of sense because it came from the underworld, and that's like, let's go. Here's another tool that you can utilize, and it creates more chaos and strife. So yeah, there's actually there's a whole group of people who just go around, and their sole purpose is to burn the dead and keep the cemeteries clean of sorts, so that as people die, you don't want them to accidentally come back alive. So you don't have personal plots of this is where my family is buried. Kind of just toss a body into a pit and then wait for the flame keepers to come and burn it up so that it doesn't rise up.
Interesting.
Yeah. Rituals are dirty. I mean, we talk about Savarion is not a nice place per se. It's not a flora fauna friendly environment. Yeah.
Interesting. Is there anything else you guys would like to touch on regarding rituals?
Ooh.
I don't think so.
No.
I do want to talk about the mausoleums a little bit.
Okay.
So some of it is ritual, but there's a secondary purpose because the zombies in Savarion are creatures that are soulless bodies that have been abducted by a parasitic creature called a cloud jumper. And a cloud jumper can only embody a husk if certain things happen. And so there's this thing that Savarianites can do, and it's called the last stand. And basically what they do is they sacrifice themselves to give themselves a boost in power and survive an onslaught of attacks and stuff like that. However, they die. Guaranteed death if they choose to do this. Extra power, extra life. They can take a beating from any source for a short period of time, but then guaranteed death. There's no way to recover them. There's no way to revive them. So the soul leaves immediately. Yep. Right? There's not that 5-minute gap, which grants the cloud jumpers the ability to jump in. And occasionally they will during that point. And so when there's a war and people start using that last stand ability, yeah, cloud jumpers come in and take over. And so nobody really understands it or knows why. It's just random. And so the idea of gathering bodies together, throwing them in a mausoleum so that if they turn into zombies, they can't get out, and then having the fire mages come through every now and again and burn everything in the mausoleum so that the bodies can't get back up becomes common practice because of the last stand and ritual magic. Yep. And so it's a combination of both. And so the idea of cemeteries, we don't have them.
Nope.
But it's because things get up and walk around if you just leave a dead body. Every now and again it comes up and it starts eating people and stuff like that.
And we're not even talking because obviously as well, battlefields carry disease, and so it's honestly a very sanitary practice as well to gather your dead and then keep them located. And this is a very aggressive world, like we talked about, so things are going to die in a more consistent basis than they should, even with healing magic, even with different magic access. It's still a violent place. It's a hard life in Savarion after the fall, after the rebirth, and after the affirmation.
All right. Is body burning like an event? Is it a big thing, or is it just something that happens in the background?
So it's definitely like this. There's a small group of fire mages that come together, and they're kind of neutral in all things. You don't really stop them. They come through, and it's semi-ceremonial. But you can honestly pay for their services, and they can come and expedite the process where they come in and burn for you if you have a problem, or you can report a problem, and they can burn. It's interesting, but yes, it's not. You may treat your dead with respect, but the body doesn't care what you do with it in this world. It is more beneficial for the whole to toss the body, burn it, than to make a big ceremony about it. You don't usually do like pyres unless the individual was a big deal. And then you could do like if your king died, if your ruler died, and we can get into the empires. If the emperor died, then yes, they would have a funeral send off with a big old pyre. Because the last thing you want is your emperor to get up around and start zombie nomming people. Because on top of that, like I'm fairly certain if I remember right, like our zombies are prolific. Like if you bite somebody and they die, they're going to rise as a husk. Not like it forces like the venom or the poison of the cloud jumper forces the soul out of that body, and then that body becomes a husk that's going to follow around. And so I guess more like whites actually, yeah. Because when a white kills in D&D and other games, when a white kills something, if you don't take care of it like fast enough, it rises as a white under the control of the white that created it, that killed the mortal, and then it goes around and creates more. So
yeah, it's similar, but yeah. Basically with both the Essence Wraith and the zombie, if the zombie bites you or the Essence Wraith consumes you, the essence is gone, but the body continues to live. So it becomes the lifeless husk. And so that's what it's called, is a husk, but that creature is not a thinking, intelligent, bound by a soul creature. It's a wandering dead thing. And so that's how that happens. But both the Essence Wraith and the zombie have the ability to create a husk. So,
yeah, the undead are not something to be messed with. That's why bodies are burned.
Have there been any major undead outbreaks?
After every battle, like any major skirmish, that's why they made them so dangerous as well. We're talking about that in a 1,000-year war, the worst battles fought were not always against other races. You had like a border skirmish or dispute, and you would have it handled by either oh goodness, why can't I think of them? Because the first ones that were created, oh my goodness, the ones that had the power of around all the others, their first constructs.
Oh, the Shimbari?
Yeah, thank you, the Shimbari. That name escaped me like gone. I was like, this is missing. So if a Shimbari came and laid waste to armies, and then there was nobody to come and collect those bodies fast enough, because that wasn't part of their job. Plus, they had no more ability. Once everything around them was dead, they had no more abilities to pull on. So the Shimbari just left the dead there, and then that would create outbreaks as these bodies, some of them would rise up, and then shamble out and create problems. So it was a hard-learned lesson, especially because the Cloud Jumpers didn't start doing this until Vagog's entrance into the world. They were more symbiotic and more playful. They actually had a purpose in the overworld. And yeah, we're on this undead track, so...
Right. Yeah, we got a question
Yeah.
from Ian to talk about the Arls.
Okay. Yeah.
So,
That's a good question. Arls are unique, created after the affirmation. The affirmation we talk about, and I'll let Jeff actually explain the Arls as a whole. I'm going to go in the affirmation because it's fun. So there was a point in history, the Horakai who were remaining went and gathered the weapons. We talk about this in part of the history of things. And they
Parvocon's weapons.
Yep, Parvocon's weapons. They go get god weapons and unleash them on the armies and decimate the world and actually split the Pangea into continents. That blast of energy and that decimation did weird things, and thus we have Arls created that harassed people for a long time.
So basically an Arl is... So because of what happened with this decimation, the souls and the essence kind of got scattered a little bit and didn't function normally. Like if you're in a battle and this guy ends this guy falls down, and then 5 minutes later his soul gets up and walks away. If a zombie bites you, the soul walks away and the body stays. Right? Those things happen. When the Horakai used Parvocon's weapons and decimated the armies, those things kind of like shattered in weird ways and didn't go to the Port of Lost Souls, or they didn't disperse the way that they were supposed to. And so the essence gathered itself back together occasionally, not in like a guaranteed in mass, but occasionally, and little pieces of it, they would gather together and gather the pieces of the bodies that had expired back together to create these Arls that were a conglomeration of the pieces of dead creatures that had come back to life. And these are, like, in the purest sense, these are essence drainers. In order to continue existing, an Arl has to consume essence. And so anytime there was a skirmish, a battle, or anything like that, Arls would come to those areas to consume the essence. And again, like, you have your physical body, you have your essence, and you have your soul. So those are separate things. The essence is what goes back into the world. It's what animates the world. And so the Arls would show up and start eating the essence itself, the stuff that you can use to turn into money and liquid for that kind of thing, and they would eat that stuff. And so Arls are really quite a powerful being, but super, super, super low on the intelligence spectrum. So they're just, I need to eat essence. And so if you cross paths with one, obviously they're going to attempt to consume your essence and do whatever it takes. And so as their bodies start to decay, they would eat the essence of another creature and then take that part of the body and then reattach. Like, I need a new arm, so I would go eat this thing and then put its arm on. And so it would be like a conglomerate, not a conglomeration, but an amalgamation of different creatures.
Yep.
And kind of a strange in being that exists, and not not particularly powerful. Like, it wouldn't be
Dangerous in groups.
dangerous in groups. Right, but a group of soldiers who were sent to go wipe them out wouldn't have the most difficult time wiping them out. Arls aren't particularly dangerous on their own, and in groups because there's a bunch of them, they're more powerful. But if you're ready for it or sent a team to go take care of them, they could fairly easily. But because of what happened with the decimation time, like that created the ability for Arls to exist.
Anytime you throw God magic around willy-nilly, you get weird things. Don't play with God magic.
All right, noted.
The Horkai didn't know exactly how to use it. So,
I mean, that's what created them. They were just trying to... I mean, there's also a lot of shock and panic because we're talking legions of Horkai existed, and then the brothers come back, and their legions are diminished, and they're like, oh, bollocks. We was not fast enough. Oh, man. I mean, that's what we talked about. God magic existed for the creation. We talked about that at the very beginning. God magic is separate from everything else. You are not supposed to wield it as a mortal. And then we had the Keepers of the Peace who wielded it. And every time they did, they created something. They obviously created the Horkai that are the reason the fall happened in the first place. And we'll have a whole fun episode on the lead up to the fall and what the Horkai did to make that happen. Because holy heck, was it long in the making and nasty. Oh, they played filthy games. But focusing on the magic, yeah. Do you have any more? And then the undead. I don't think we have any more really undead dangerous creatures that exist in the world either.
I think we talked about them all.
Yeah.
Between the husks and the Arls and the essence wraiths and the zombies.
We do have our vampires. We didn't really talk about our vampires.
Did we talk about the...
Or
do
broken.
we want to talk about the broken?
That's depends on how much time we have left.
Ian, do we have enough time to talk about the broken?
Or do we have? Should we take some questions? Do we have questions coming in?
Let's talk about the broken.
Yeah, we'll talk about broken. Okay, so in one of our previous episodes, we talked about the essence and arcane magic and how they're God-given magics, right? They are not supposed to mix. They are polar opposites. If you were gifted with essence, they wanted to give you an opportunity to have power, and so you could go and you could pursue getting baptized into a ley line and then gaining access to arcane after much study. Never supposed to mix. Matter of fact, if you have essence and you try, they turn you away because like, no, bro, you'll die. Like, they're like, but I'll win. Nah, bro, you'll die. And then Ayala, of course, Ayala being a dirtbag, finds an individual who wants more power and says, let me introduce you to my god, who can give you the power you need. And so he goes and does a personal introduction to Vagog, and Vagog's like, sure, bro, let me help you. And as this individual gets baptized into the ley lines with essence magic already within them, those energies clash and start to tear each other apart, and Vagog's influence knits them together as a whole, but they're not complete. So when they come out of that, they're insane, for one. They're not normal anymore. Because they have an insatiable hunger for essence. Just like the Arls are constantly essence eaters, have to eat it to survive. The broken leak essence on a daily basis, literally. Their bodies can't hold it because the arcane energies are pushing it out of them. And it's not supposed to do that. So they have a sucker, a proboscis that extends out of their hands, their palms, and they stick it into living creatures, preferably other Savarianites. They can do the vegetarian diet. It's just not nearly as fulfilling.
Well, that would be the animals.
Yeah, they eat animals. They can't suck it off. They can't take it out of plants. And then you wanna go into more of the broken.
Why? I don't know. I feel like you covered it, but essentially, if a broken is exposed to sunlight, it drains them of the essence that's still in their body. And if they go 2 days, so 50 hours, because our day-night cycle is a 25-hour day-night cycle. But if they go 2 full days without seeing the sun, and then they step into the sunlight, they're drained completely, so they die. So either a broken has to go every day into the sunlight and then consume a sufficient amount of essence to survive the next day, or they're stuck in the dark forever. And
hungry monsters waiting for an unsuspecting individual.
Right. And so they don't die in the dark, right? So they become timeless. But once they're in the dark for 2 days, they're stuck forever.
Yep. Hope you picked a nice place.
I know, right? Pick a nice place. Good luck. But they have both the access to all of the essence and the access to the entire arcane tree. So on terms of power, they're actually significantly more powerful than either one of the other two, because they have access to both. Additionally, because they are broken, the longer that they spend as part of that as a broken, the more powerful they get. So they are increasingly more powerful, and the more essence access they have and the more arcane access they have, the more powerful they become. And they have their own branch of basically
abilities.
An in-between magic. That allows them to do unique things that only the broken can do. And it's a binding of the essence and the arcane magic that's unique to them and steps them above anybody else in power, but their limitation. And so this is why we would say that there are a version of vampires. You don't turn somebody into a broken by stabbing them, and then you still have to be baptized you have to have access to essence and then be baptized and survive that combination
And receive the blessings of Vagog.
Right.
Blessings.
And they can't procreate.
Nope.
So once you become a broken, you're no longer capable of procreating.
You're not siring it.
But it has to be, I was born with essence, I was baptized, Vagog said yes, I could be part of it to become one of them. And so unlike vampires, you don't like bite them and they become a vampire, but they're the closest thing we have, because they have to consume the essence of another being to survive. So,
and not everybody survives that process in a healthy way either. Sometimes, because it's extremely painful, you are literally having your being ripped apart atomically and then being stitched back together by some other god force that hates you. Vagog does not like people. Like it's her purpose is corruption and destruction, to return this back to zero so that they can fix what was done. Because there's a second mistake that was made that we can talk about in a different episode that effectively created the existence of Vagog in the first place. The two creator gods made two major mistakes. Yeah, and if you guys have any questions about what we talked about, we could totally get into that. I was going to talk a little bit about how it's interesting because eventually some of the broken figured out that they can take liquid essence that's been harvested and use that as kind of like a medium, a danger mode. Like, I can't go out and eat, so I have to do something. But they don't die if they touch sunlight, unless they have been hidden for multiple days, and then if they decide, like, I'm done being unalived, like, I'm done being this half-life or dead life, and they step out into the sun, their whole body bursts, and the essence is released. And it's ash. They turn to ash.
I did want to just touch on, so in Savarion, there's two organizations that we would consider secret societies. They exist in, the under, trying to influence the bigger game, and one of them is called the Shadows Guild, and we'll have a whole episode on them. And then the other one is the Knights of End of Days. We'll have a whole episode on them as well. But the Knights of End of Days were initiated and started by the first broken. And so their goal, overarching goal, is to reset the world to zero. Now, Vagog's goal is annihilation.
Yep.
Right? So when you say wipe it clean, we mean like out of existence wipe it clean. But she can't say that to the Knights of the End of Days, because then they're like, well, we don't want to be part of that. And so what she tells them the goal is to have them assume authority over the world and then reset it back to the way that it started and should be. And so that's their goal. And so they spend all of their time infiltrating the power structures of the world in order to take over and take control and then reset the world.
And since once they have that baptism, they can't die of natural means. They live forever. Unless they're killed, or unless they're done for, like someone actually destroys their physical body, or they forget to eat 2 days in a row and step out in the sunlight, and so they unalive themselves.
So
Then yeah, if there's any questions that pop up, we're happy to take them as we keep rambling about other fun stuff. We have one. Oh. Okay, my bad.
well, it doesn't look like we have any questions right
No.
now. Ian, do we have any questions?
Okay.
So let's go ahead and wrap it up.
Yeah.
And so we're going to do this every Tuesday and every Thursday at 1 o'clock. We will be live.
Mountain Standard Time.
1 o'clock Mountain Standard Time. 1 p.m.
Yeah.
Mountain Standard Time.
That's important too.
Not going to do it 1 in the morning. So we'll do this every week except for...
We could one day. We could do a night out.
We could do a night out. But we're going to do this real regularly. We are going to take a break over the holiday season for a week. We will post the stories, the 2 stories of the creation story during those weeks. So we will still have posts that go out to everybody, but we won't be live during that in between Christmas and New Year's week. We will not go live that week.
Right.
So just to let you know, but we will be here next Tuesday at 1 p.m. Mountain doing this again.
Yep, absolutely. I'm excited to get some more, people interested, field some questions. I'm always curious what people come up with. Sometimes the questions go off the wall and keep us on our toes. Taylor, thank you so much. I'm glad we got to enlighten more about the world.
It's really interesting stuff to know.
Heck yeah, you did great. Any other questions before we clear it out? I mean, obviously Jeff gave a good close. I'm going to give you one last chance to ask any questions you want.
I don't think I have any questions.
All right. It's out.
All right.
Bye.